This is All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces.
Hi, welcome to All Things Caregiving. My name is Cindy Mariner. I'm the founder of Breathing Spaces. I'm here today with my co-host, Cindy Gum,
I
and we are really pleased to have with us today Tiffany Baker. Tiffany, I'm very happy to say, is one of our team members at the Breathing Spaces crew, and she is brought in because Tiffany is a death doula. It was my mission at Breathing Spaces to make sure that we talk about that word and that topic because it is so important. Death is part of life. And I am overjoyed with Tiffany's background and expertise. She brings so much to everything that we're doing. And Tiffany, very grateful that you've been with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us, Tiffany, tell us a little bit about what is a death doula? What does a death doula do? What's your passion here?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much for asking. I one of my great passions is making sure that people know that death doulas exist,
Yeah.
and that we're out there to support all of the non-medical needs around death and dying. So, what that can look like is very much like a birthing doula, someone who supports the mother and the family unit in preparing the way emotionally and spiritually and mentally for this new addition. In a very similar way, at the other end of life doulas are there to support the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of the transition of this person being in 3D reality in the family and the unit of support, and then transitioning away from being in that 3D reality. But in the work that I do, it's very much about understanding and embracing the continuity of this person's presence, whether it's physical or not, right? We recognize that someone's presence is with us even when they aren't with us in the room. In the same way that when I'm across the country from my family members, they're still there for me. Even when someone dies, the impacts that they've had on me, their love, what we've shared, our memories together, stay with me through the rest of my life.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So important to bring that up. Absolutely. And so tell me a little bit more about as a death doula, what is it that you actually do? What are you helping folks process through?
Absolutely. So it can look wildly different from person to person in family unit and unit of support to the next. So, um, as I said, it's all things non-medical. So each doula comes with their own background of skills that they bring to task, right? That they have to offer as, like a bunch of paints on a palette, that they bring with them to the families that they support. And it can look like anything from, I think the more traditional idea of a death doula is that this person works directly with the person who is dying to help them have the kind of death that they want to have.
Mm.
So before I go into the rest of this description, I actually have some questions. So I'm going to
Oh,
encourage
great.
the audience to get a pen and paper and write down these three questions because these are three of the most important things that we as death doulas bring to the families and to the individual who is dying.
Great.
So the first question is, what is your idea of a good death? Your idea of a good death. The second one, what is my death plan? And that's kind of a big one, and we'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But what is my death plan is the second question. And the third question is, who do I want to help make sure that the first and second questions are carried out in my final days?
These are fantastic questions, Tiffany. Really
And
important points.
they're often questions that we don't think to ask
Yeah.
ourselves.
You
And so I support individuals and their families in answering these questions and carrying them out, carrying the answers out. And this can happen at any stage. So I've had people call me perfectly healthy. They're making their plans. Maybe they're retirees and they're about to travel the world and they're wanting to make sure that they have everything in order before they go abroad. I have people call me when someone gets a diagnosis that their end is coming and that it's time for them to, if they haven't already done this preemptively, to make those final preparations.
Wow.
I have also had people call me after their loved one died. And let me tell you, this work, there's no time limit on it. So, although we as death doulas really want folks to take the opportunity while they are healthy, while they are still embodied, to like ask themselves these questions and share their answers with their circle of support, we also, there are no barriers here. So even if someone has already died, it's not too late to answer some of these questions
Mm.
after the fact. And I know that that seems kind of weird, right? It's like, well, this person's already died. So if we had intentions for a good death that weren't met, then what's the point of answering that question? The point of answering that question is to process how we feel about the fact that our ideal and what actually happened may not have matched.
Yeah.
And that's a really big part of what we do as death doulas also. We
Mhm.
talk to people about their vision of a good death,
Mhm.
and then we help them to bridge when sometimes the reality can't meet that vision.
I love what you're saying. I'm really fascinated by, and I didn't know that, people might think to call you when a death hasn't gone the way they would have liked, and how helpful that could be to talk to someone who manages that. And I'm really curious, Tiffany, how do people know when it's time to really call you to bring you in? And I was also wondering, like, when do I call hospice? Can you help me figure all of that out? I don't know anything about that world when it comes to the end, but how do I know when to pick up the phone and really call you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And people ask this question all the time. So it's never too early or too late to call an end of life doula. So if you do not yet, if you are an adult and you do not yet have a plan for your end of life, I recommend you make one. If you don't know how to start, calling an end of life doula is a great way to start. An end of life doula can point you in so many different directions, can ask you a bunch of questions. That's what I feel my role is more than anything, is to ask someone questions that help them to guide themselves to the answers that they need. So, regardless of your age, even if you're in your 20s and you're like, I'm in the prime of my life, I'm not thinking about death at all, right?
Right.
Things happen. And regardless of whether things happen or not, our ability to face, accept, and invite in conversations about the fact that our time is finite. We are not going to be on this earth in these bodies forever. And we know that, whatever age we are. And there is something so life-giving about facing these questions, allowing ourselves to have the inevitable emotions that come up around the idea of no longer being in these bodies, having our loved ones around, all of these things. When we give ourselves the opportunity to look at that, to face it, and to make choices around it, it's incredibly empowering. And it brings us to a new understanding and love of our lives that we can't even anticipate ahead of time. So
Mhm.
I recommend you call an end of life doula right away. Now, in answer to the question about hospice, that's different. So, hospice is a medical team that comes in to support the needs of a dying person when they are within 6 months. That's 6 months. And
Mhm.
as you mentioned, Cindy, it's very common that people do not call until the last few days. I highly recommend you call hospice as soon as your doctor says that it might be time. And I say this from experience because my mom was placed on hospice last March. She has Alzheimer's and she was having dips in her health. And I was afraid. I'm an end-of-life doula. I was afraid to call in hospice because it had that feeling of like, oh no, are we really here?
Yeah.
But let me tell you that taking that step and speaking with the angels, absolute physical bodied angels that walk this earth and work for hospice, these people can help us in so many ways to come to terms with what is happening and also to make sure that this process is as supported as it can possibly be. And there's a big difference between a family that has support at end of life and one that doesn't. And I highly recommend from what I've seen that you choose to be one that has support.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's much clearer to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a lot of times, answering the question of call an end-of-life doula as soon as you hear about an end-of-life doula, like a lot of times people are like, oh, but that still doesn't apply to me. Um, that's okay. I think that if you are a new parent who is putting together a will because of your children and you are settling those kinds of details, an end-of-life doula is a good call to make. If you're about to travel abroad, end of life doula is a good call to make. There's so many reasons, and also if you are very afraid of death, an end of life doula is a very good call to make.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
good point. Do you do this? So I'm just looking, I mean, I know you're in Portland.
Mhm.
So do you do most that kind of pre-planning? And let's say I finally decide, oh, I'm going to get my will and my trust in order, and oh, this wouldn't be a bad idea either. How do you do this over Zoom? And about how many appointments does it take for this pre-planning stage?
A great question. So, um, if the content wasn't emotional, we could probably get the pre-planning done in 1 to 2 meetings, but typically it's very emotional. And so it can take a few extra meetings just depending on how much the individual is able or how much they've already processed about their own death. So it can be anywhere from 1 to 4 sessions, I think, like for the planning part. And also bear in mind that there often are things that end of life doulas cannot do. For example, I am not legally trained, so I can't walk you through the paperwork aspect of things like wills and stuff like that. But I can help find you the right people that can walk you through
Really?
those.
Okay.
So yeah, we're really good at giving like a nice checklist and
Yeah.
walking someone through the questions that they may not, even if they were given that checklist and they went home with it, they may not do the checklist. So we're almost like accountability partners in that way. We're emotional and spiritual support through that process of making these decisions that can feel really difficult to make. And this is another thing I want to make sure that folks know. You can make these decisions today, and I always recommend as you are looking at these questions that you're thinking about yourself today. Not what it would be like if I were to get X, Y, or Z, because you will revisit these questions as your life changes. So
Mhm.
your answers today are not about like Tiffany, if Tiffany had terminal cancer diagnosis. It's about Tiffany today, how I am as a 42-year-old individual right now, what I would want. And so these things do get revisited over time to make them appropriate for your life circumstances as they adjust and change in your life.
So many of the people that are with breathing spaces are active caregivers like I was for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I think really it would have been comforting had I known to call someone, because I think caregivers know it's going to get worse before it gets a lot worse if they're doing the kind of caregiving I was. It's a situation where you're not going to take care of someone that's getting better. So it's downhill.
Mhm.
And I do think that reaching out to someone that could help me know the signs of what to be on the lookout for in terms of, I really, it's so uncertain. Caregivers, we deal with such uncertainty,
Yeah.
but to have someone as part of our team that we can call when we sense it may be getting a lot tougher, or everyone's going to have their own,
Right.
time
Right.
frame.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of my time with my eyes wide open and my heart No, 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 no. No, no, this isn't happening. So to have someone like you to have been able to talk to during that would have made a significant difference. So
Yeah.
the value of what you do cannot be understated. Oh my God.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a team effort when you
It
really
is.
get down to it, and you're part of the team, is how
Yeah.
I'm sensing it. And you can also help me midwife, this person that I love, or maybe, I'm caring for at any rate. Some are difficult relationships, but to have that additional support, no matter what you're dealing with, is having a team member empower me to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that so much of what's being done at Breathing Spaces is being the caregiver's caregiver, right?
Yeah.
So helping to remind the caregiver that they too need care.
Right.
And that I think is very much the work of an end of life doula. I'll say that in the cases that I've worked, I have worked directly with the person dying only once in terms
Mhm.
of so often the person who is dying is at peace with it. They're ready. They have, had their time in their illness, and they often are more at peace, at least in my experience with the cases I've worked,
Yeah.
and that they were really happy that I was there for their family members, right?
Mhm.
So that often ends up being a big part of the work that we do as end of life doulas.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something in your questions. What is my death plan? I thought that was a really, really important question to put out. What can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I would love to. So, a death plan has to do with thinking about that first question, what's my idea of a good death,
Right.
right? So then the death plan becomes talking out all of the logistics that I would like to have at end of life. These days, probably goes without saying, but just so everyone is aware, I would say more than 90% of people want to elect to die at home. So and probably that percentage is way higher than 90, but I'm just saying 90 to be, allowing. For the most part, folks want to either die at home or in familiar surroundings that they have seen in their lifetimes. And sometimes the ability to support that requires a little bit of planning. It's, if a person is living in a facility or if they've been hospitalized, there are things that need to happen in order to make that possible. So knowing ahead of time, my plan, my desire is to die at home means then the loved ones know, because having a death plan isn't just something you do to for yourself. You have it and then you speak to your loved ones about what your plan is and what you want. And then they know, okay, so there are certain things that we would like to try and make happen for this person
Right.
because of their plan.
Mhm.
So it's your surroundings. It's, who would you like to be in the room with you? Do you actually want to be alone? Some people do want to die alone. And I know that sounds strange because many people, their biggest fear is dying alone. But for some people, they're like, I don't think I can if my loved ones are around me. I don't think I can let go if I'm looking in the faces of these folks that I feel like I need to be there for, right? And our death is really our own. It's our personal journey. And so for some folks, they do want to be alone. And that is an important conversation to have ahead of time.
Mm.
Also, if you only want one person or a few, right? Having that conversation ahead of time with the loved ones that maybe you're like, I need you to be somewhere else. These can be incredibly healing conversations, even though they sound very difficult to have. Overall, I feel like our ability to be with the questions around end of life helps us to mature our souls to the point where we're able to let go and move on.
Mm.
And speaking just for myself, I want to be ready whenever that time comes because I know that I can't plan it, right? I can have a death plan, and that's important in case those circumstances align, but I don't know how that may come for me, right? So
Yeah.
just being able to have these conversations and speak to my loved ones means that I have a little bit more rest internally. I've ticked off some internal boxes, and I can feel a little bit more at peace.
Mhm.
Oh, that really touched my heart. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tiffany. It really, I really started to tear up as I was thinking about what you were saying as when I died myself, and the person that I would want there, and what a time of spiritual connection our death can be if we're not in pain. And I think, I know hospice helps manage pain.
Yes.
And managing pain, I'm sure, is part of what you talk about with people. I know that's got to be one of the biggest fears, but not having pain at the very end will allow that spiritual connection that we want to have as we make our transition. It's kind of like a birthing and a birth canal, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't want to be afraid of that. So you've given me some really great things to think about, just really rich.
Yeah. Yeah. And in
Yeah.
fact, in my training, in one of the trainings I took for end of life doula work, they said we labor into the world and we labor out of the world.
Oh, I like that. And it's true. We know the
Very good point.
truth of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're so welcome.
It's so much. It's so much. I'm so glad that you're here today.
Mm.
And the last question that you put out there was, who do I want to help make sure number one and number two are carried out? Expand on that a little bit for us.
You bet. So, in some cases, folks will elect to have an end of life doula. So, when we are on our dying journeys, we cannot advocate for ourselves very well, if at all, right? Because
Right.
we may or may not be verbal, we may be in and out of consciousness. And so, therefore, we need to choose someone that we trust, that also has the temerity, the ability to face whatever pressures may show up. And sometimes that's medical, sometimes it's, the folks who are trying to help, they want to help.
Mhm.
Sometimes that might get in the way of the desire for a peaceful passing, right? So it's important to have someone around that is capable of saying, hey, thank you so much. I really feel the intention behind what you want to do here. This person has chosen this kind of death for this reason. And so we actually want to elect not to have those services at this time. Or they may end up needing to be a gatekeeper for folks who might want to come and visit,
Mhm.
just explaining this person has asked that it be very quiet and that they don't have visitors. And I know that might be really difficult. And then there's all kinds of solutions that we as end of life doulas can help to prepare in the case that a person has needs that may be difficult for family members or loved ones to accept, such as creating, it might be, about video testimonials, right? Things that the person wants to say, but the person who is dying is in their process. So that person can create a video that's a message to that person. There's all kinds of solutions
Okay.
to meet the needs of everyone. But first and foremost, our doulaship is to the death. And so we are there to ensure that the death is how the person would like.
Mhm.
So often the answer to that question could be an end of life doula because that's a neutral party that will not have an emotional reaction to the person who is dying or at the fact that that person is dying. But it could be someone in that person's circle. So they might elect, oh, it's going to be my cousin Terry. He is wonderful. He has faced death of loved ones before, and he has a real way of talking with people. I know he'll be a good
Oh,
steward of my last days. So that last question is a really important one. And it may be surprising to recognize that it might not be the person you're closest to that should have that responsibility because they have the responsibility of being your loved one who is in their grieving process at that time.
right, right.
Yeah.
Wow, I have flashbacks when we talk about my time with both my mom and my dad in their final days, and to have had you there, my goodness, what a difference that would have made for them, I believe, and absolutely for myself and my family. This is, I speak so often about the importance of what you do.
Mhm.
It is invaluable to this life. Life includes death. So Tiffany, you have been a tremendous offering to our audience here. I can't thank you enough for what you do and what you bring. And Cindy, I know that you've got some questions.
No, I really, I have a lot here to take with me and absorb. And I'm really hearing that, Tiffany, that you're able to help people assess for themselves
Yeah.
what it is their needs are. And then, the resources to help me support that. And I, as a family therapist, I know one of the biggest issues is at the end of life, and you've got 3 kids and they're all on a different page. This could be very, very helpful if the person is able to reach out and get the support, for instance, from you before the kids take over, so to speak.
Right.
It's great work. I love your attitude and your way of being with a difficult subject. So I'm going to have a good time to really think on it. And thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, unquestionably. And folks, please visit the website, breathingspacesfc.com. You will see Tiffany and all of the offerings that she has available. You can have a way to contact her as well. She is a gift to this world. So I encourage you to reach out. It's part of the cycle, folks. It really is.
Yeah.
Tiffany, again, beyond grateful for you to be here today. You've been a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been just a
Thanks,
joy to be
Tiffany.
here with you both.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, folks, we'll see you next time. Thank you again for joining us.
This has been All Things Caregiving from Breathing Spaces